This is the Roman arena at Arles in southern France. 2,000 years ago, 20,000 spectators packed these seats. By the Middle Ages, rival families had carved it into private fortresses, towers on the arena walls, different clans fighting each other from inside a Roman sports stadium. Europe went from a single emperor at Aachen to this, and the reason isn't what most people think. It wasn't the Vikings. The empire was eating itself from the inside. To understand that, we start with the system Charlemagne built and the fatal weakness baked into it from the start. Charlemagne governed through counties, administrative districts, each run by an appointed count. A count was an officer, not an owner. He governed on behalf of the king, and the king could remove him. That's the theory. The reality. Charlemagne's empire stretched from the Pyrenees to the Elbe. No postal service, no standing bureaucracy, no reliable way to monitor what a count was doing 3 weeks' ride from the capital. The entire system depended on loyalty it could not enforce. While Charlemagne lived, his personal authority held things together. After his death in 814, his grandsons divided the empire at the Treaty of Verdun in 843. 3 kingdoms where there had been one. Each king inherited the same structural problem, counts who were too far away to control, in territories they increasingly treated as their own. Barcelona shows the mechanism. Before 868, the Count of Barcelona was appointed by the Carolingian king, removable, accountable, an administrator. After 868, Guifré the Hairy founded his own dynasty. He still acknowledged the king, but the allegiance was nominal, meaning he recognized the king in theory while ignoring him in practice. He passed the county to his sons. The county became property. This is the single most important transformation in post-Carolingian Europe, the conversion of public office into private property, and Barcelona wasn't unique. Aquitaine, Bavaria, Poitou, Toulouse, Flanders. Across the former empire, counts stopped being officers and became owners. The kingdom didn't shatter from a single blow. It dissolved county by county as every local strongman made himself permanent. Now, the Vikings, they're the popular explanation. The raiders who broke the empire apart. Viking raids did devastate these kingdoms. Charles the Fat, Louis the Stammerer, they faced constant attacks. But the Vikings were opportunists. They exploited fractures that already existed. The timeline tells the story. Barcelona went independent in 868. The Great Viking Siege of Paris came in 885. Fragmentation was already underway before the heaviest raids. Vikings accelerated the collapse. They didn't cause it. And the empire's inability to control its own officers, that was the real disease. The Vikings were a fever on top of it. So the offices became property, the Vikings piled on, and the Carolingians lost control, but they didn't vanish. They clung to the throne through sacred prestige. In their veins flowed the blood of Charlemagne. The Carolingians remained kings of France until 987, kings of Germany until 911, but being king increasingly meant nothing, and this pattern should sound familiar. The Merovingians, the dynasty Charlemagne's family overthrew, followed the exact same arc. They kept the crown for over a century after losing real power. The mayors of the palace ran the kingdom while Merovingian kings sat on their thrones as figureheads. Now the Carolingians repeated the cycle, different dynasty, identical structure. Real power drained to counts, dukes, and castellans, while the royal title survived on prestige alone. In 987, the last Carolingian king of France died without a clear heir. The great lords chose Hugh Capet, a powerful duke but not a Carolingian. He founded a new dynasty, the Capetians, and his kingdom, he controlled the road between Paris and Orléans. That's it. The surrounding countryside bristled with castles that owed him nothing. Vincennes, today practically inside Paris, held a hostile fortress. The King of France, in name, was lord of one road in reality. This is the deepest level of fragmentation, not just counts ignoring the king, but a king whose domain was smaller than some of those counties. Hugh Capet survived because he was too weak to threaten anyone. And one striking footnote. When Louis XVI was executed in 1793, the Revolutionary Court didn't call him king, they called him Louis Capet. 806 years after Hugh Capet took the throne, his family name was still the label they pinned on the last king of France. Strip away the titles and the treaties, and here's what political power looked like by the year 1000. One castle, a stone keep garrisoned by armed men. Around it, the territory that garrison could physically dominate, the fields, the villages, the peasants, forced to hand over labor and grain. This was the irreducible unit of medieval power. A castellan, the lord who controlled the castle, extracted everything he could from the surrounding population. His reach ended where another castellans began. An effective regional lord, like the Count of Barcelona or the Count of Flanders, might bind several castellans together under his authority, but even he ruled through these atomic units. Power had crumbled to the smallest scale it could reach without disappearing entirely. And this brings us back to Arles, that Roman arena, a monument built for 20,000 citizens of a unified empire, now carved into rival fortresses, towers on the walls, families at war inside a single building. Is the perfect emblem of post-Carolingian Europe. Public infrastructure built by a centralized state, repurposed for private war between local strongmen. The arena still stood. The empire that built it was gone. In its place, dozens of armed families, each claiming a piece of the ruin. A king who rules one road, families fighting inside a Roman arena. It sounds like the end of civilization. It wasn't. These lords were violent, but purposefully so. They didn't want to destroy their peasants. Peasants were the source of all wealth. This was exploitation with structure, not random destruction. And the pattern wasn't new. Central authority failing to control local strongmen had repeated since the fall of Rome. But this particular moment of fragmentation, the castle and county landscape of the year 1000, became the foundation of everything that followed. Vassalage, manorialism, the slow, centuries-long reassembly of kingdoms. All of it grew from this soil. Europe didn't collapse into barbarism. It reorganized at a smaller scale. And that reorganization, the violent, purposeful, built on castles and the exploitation of peasants, shaped the continent for the next 500 years.